Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Conversations Cafe. Really glad you decided to join us tonight, wherever you're at. It's 6 p.m. here in Chicago, Central Standard Time. And we are going to be talking to a really cool panel of people today, including people from 86 to Silence, Hope for the Day's peer-led education from peers in the industry, in the food and beverage industry. And it's going to be really great to also be able to engage with some people out in the community that are also bringing this conversation and bringing some hope to other people. So I want to make sure that everybody is probably noticing at this point that our consummate host, Carl Evans, the Director of Operations at Hope for the Day, he couldn't make it tonight. So I've been asked to pinch hit as the co-host tonight, or the host tonight, whereas usually on Thursday nights, 6 p.m. here in Chicago, you would be seeing Carl with me behind the scenes helping Rick and Vicky produce the show. So bear with me this evening as I both help produce the show and host. The Cookout is tonight's episode title, and we're going to be exploring the intersection between food and mental health. When we talk about a hierarchy of needs, you think about if you're hungry, it's pretty hard to take care of your mental health. So we're going to be kind of exploring that through a couple different lenses today with our guests. And when I said 86 to Silence, I want to make crystal clear what that is. Hope for the Day has been doing peer prevention education since 2016, and I was a Chicago Public Schools teacher, special ed teacher specifically, when I first started volunteering with Hope for the Day. And I have been very lucky to be able to spend the last couple years of my professional career bringing peer-to-peer proactive suicide prevention and mental health education to as many communities as I possibly can. So it all started in 2011 when Hope for the Day was established by our founder and CEO, Johnny Boucher, in the wake of losing his boss and mentor to suicide, and going back into the venues, meeting people where they're at, not where we expect them to be. One of the most core parts of the Hope for the Day ethos. You see it in everything we've done with music, going into the venues, going on the tours, meeting people where they're at the concerts. We've done it by doing it with products, by doing it with coffee, by doing it with hummus, by doing it with beer. And people continue to come out and say, hey, I want to do something. I want to be able to impact people in my sphere of influence. So we get them educated and we get to push that ball forward. But recent developments in May, we were able to start doing officially Project R.E.D team, which is peer-led education for peers from the military and first responders community. But what's going to be very much relevant this evening is 86 to Silence. This is our education and outreach program specifically for the food and beverage industry, created and designed and implemented by peers from that industry. So we have a couple really special people joining us tonight for that. So without further ado, we're going to get into introducing our panelists for the evening. I'm just going to bring them on one at a time and with a little short hello, and then we'll dig in a little bit more as to what they're doing, what they're up to, and some of their thoughts about this intersection. So thanks again for joining us. I am going to bring on first, I'm going to bring on Ed. Ed from Mars and Community of the Future and so many other special things going on. You want to say hello, Ed? I think you're on. Let me unmute you, buddy.
Oh, I got it. Hey, how are you? Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. And I love your Twin Peaks reference in the background for the Twin Peaks fans out there.
Oh yeah, well, it's definitely the zone I think we're living in right now. This is a portal in another world that we're at.
It's definitely feeling Twilight Zone-y for sure. I'm going to bring on the next person. Emmaline, will you please join us? Let's make sure we see you and hear you. Emmaline is a nutritionist, and she joins us tonight to talk about just some of the cool stuff she's been doing. So I'm going to ask her to unmute, and so she can say hello to the audience.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, this is so cool. I can't wait for you to share some of the excellent things you're doing right now as well. Let's keep on down the line. We got Jeannine. We got Jeannine joining us from 86 to Silence. She is a champion and a half. Just been able to really start this conversation in some pretty significant ways. Hi, Jeannine.
Hi, thanks for having me.
I like your background too. You got like a nice illustration. That looks like Root magazine or something like that. I like that.
They're real though. That's not fake.
Oh yes, of course. Thanks for being here. Here we go. Joel Frieders, let me ask you to start your video and unmute. I'm really happy to have you here. We had a really fun day. Lots of projects. We rocked.
So many.
You made it home in time for the show. Say hello, Joel.
Hello. Notice the sheen. I brought a rag to kind of buff it down a little bit, but I apologize if you're...
Buff it down.
Thanks for having me, brother.
Of course. And Joel is the Hope for the Day Director of Public Policy, among a lot of other things, but I'll let him talk about that as we get into it today. All right. So last but not least, I'm going to ask Juan Kim to start his video and unmute and say hello. Chef Juan Kim, artist, DJ, man of many talents. Hello.
Hey, am I on video?
Here, I think
Is that your control?
No, I asked you to start your video and then it was there and then it was.
There we go.
Woo! Woo! Yes.
Technology. Woo!
Juan, what's up, man? You want to say hi to the audience?
Howdy. How you doing? How you guys doing?
Thanks for making time, man. I know this guy's a trooper. Even in transit, he's like, I'm there to talk about this stuff. Cool.
It was a last minute decision to come back early from this trip, so it had to make it happen.
And am I not mistaken? You got a furry friend with you that might make a cameo? Is Gus?
He is currently out on a walk with Kendall, hopefully to take a shit.
Perfect. Road tripping. Love it.
You know.
Yeah. Taking care of the pets. Awesome. Well, this is awesome. This is the first ever cookout, Hope for the Day cookout. And, you know, it would be way cooler if we were smelling the charcoal and kind of standing around behind Mars or something together. But this will have to do for the time being as we try and just be respectful of people's health and well-being and how everybody's just kind of navigating a bunch of weird feelings wherever they find themselves at for a myriad of reasons. So today we're going to talk about some ways that people can think about food and think about the things you all are doing to better take care of themselves, to instill that hope that we can overcome mental health challenges, we can heal, we can manage, no matter who we are and what we're facing. Sometimes it's a little complicated and it's not overnight, but we can do it because that hope fights that despair. And you guys do a lot of cool stuff through food. And I was raised by a very Italian woman. And anytime there was need for celebration or soothing or, you know, just in general, food was loved. So just excited to hear all your perspectives on this conversation today. So first off, I want to start with Joel just for a second. You got to celebrate some pretty incredible achievements over the last year, but I'd say on July 1st with that creative partnership, Odell putting out that beer, that had to feel pretty good, man. You want to talk about that real quick?
Yeah, that was cool. So like Mike said, I work with Hope for the Day. Half is public policy, looking at how our government interacts with mental health. And the other half is strategic partnerships, which means I basically get to make friends with people that I get along with. And then we find new and inventive ways of putting the conversation about mental health into their community, be it through product or event for education. And after the Craft Brewers Conference in April, it should have been held in San Antonio on 4/20. Unfortunately, that was canceled like everything else was. But rather than just saying, all right, maybe next year, the CBC threw a virtual Craft Brewers Conference, and Hope for the Day was again invited. Instead of having to fly out there, we had to make some time and do a little virtual presentation. So Johnny and I were able to communicate with what we thought would be, maybe 50, 60 people. Ended up topping 775 attendees during the live presentation. So that was pretty exciting. But almost immediately after the presentation, we got hit up by a bunch of breweries. And the first email that I opened was from a brewery called Odell, which, if you're not familiar, they are out of Denver and Fort Collins, Colorado. And being a fan of craft beer, this was one of the first breweries that I remember having my friend in Denver send me some of their doubles. And then when I saw them at Target, I completely ticked my wife off by spending like way too much money on Odell beer. I'm like, I've had this before. And it made me super happy. But really, really cool people. And I immediately developed a relationship with them about mental health and suicide prevention. And it was cool to see how a company that's, they're employee owned, so they have a little bit different structure than some of the companies that I've worked with. But their immediate focus was on how do we talk to our employees about mental health and the importance of just getting ahead of some of these things and having a safe and healthy work environment that would be more focused on how we're doing as opposed to what we're producing, at least as far as an output for one person standpoint. But that partnership kind of started with an education, and we hit all 155 employees over the course of like 6 different Zoom setups. And as we were saying, all right, well, what's next? The obvious evolution for a brewery, especially one who can't throw an event, was to try to find a way to start the conversation in their brew houses. So we did a tap room only golden ale. It's nice and light, like a 5.8. I haven't drank it yet. I don't drink Monday through Thursday, at least for the next couple minutes. But they released it on July 1st, and almost instantly, like the comments we're seeing on Untappd from people that are drinking it that didn't realize that the conversation about mental health could be paired with a beer. It was pretty cool to see. So I'm incredibly inspired with the fact that they were like, yeah, let's do something about it. Because I know it can be kind of squirrely to bring up mental health when you're talking, about alcohol from an alcohol company. But those companies that are like sick of just watching the same thing happen over and over again, they're kind of sick of watching it happen over and over again. And they're ready to kind of take the step and say, you know what? We support having the conversation about mental health. So it was cool to have a beer released called Open Conversations. I'll grab the can here when we're getting towards the end. I don't want to let it get too warm.
Sounds good, man. Sounds good.
No,
Yeah, that's remarkable.
Very excited about it.
Yeah, and the label this time also has a little support and instructions on having a difficult conversation, which is like just walking it a little bit further from the Hops for Hope we did last year with older. So that's awesome, man. Thanks for sharing a little bit about that. And Joel's been also championing the 86 to Silence cause in those craft brew circles. Now, I wanna pivot to Jeannine for a moment, because Jeannine comes from the culinary world and has just done an incredible job helping me with the education piece of 86 to Silence and how we can help make it okay to talk about mental health in the industry. And Jeannine brings her own perspective to the whole conversation too, with a whole different layer of life experiences. So it's just a really great way to showcase how we all have a story and we can use it to take a negative experience maybe that was negative for us and make it something positive for somebody else. So Jeannine, what has it been like for you in leading these education sessions, 86 to Silence, within your community, seeing the response from the peers and stuff like that?
Thanks for having me on. And so I knew that there was a need for this a long time ago. I've been in the restaurant business for 30 years.
Yeah.
I've worked everywhere from Kentucky Fried Chicken to Charlie Trotter's. And I just recently have spent the past 3 years as Rick Bayless's culinary assistant and running the Impact Culinary Training School on the West Side, where I'm teaching 18 to 24-year-olds culinary fundamentals for free and then getting them in paid internships in the best restaurants of the city. But in all of that time, we've needed to be able to talk to each other about what we're going through. And what happened to me when I didn't feel that I could talk to people about what I was going through in the industry, because I was often told to suck it up, or, you know, I was being too emotional. I hid all that stress in alcohol and substances, and it created, and that was fine for a while until I started having consequences. And so, you know, 86 to Silence isn't about sobriety, but I personally, you know, have been in recovery for almost 4 years, and I'm happy to be, to give information about that to anyone who might be right now. But mental health is a big deal in our industry, and there's a stigma attached to talking about it. It's very white, cis, heteronormative, patriarchy driven business of productivity and linear and results and faster, and emotions are bad. And I bought into that for a long time to try to get a seat at the table. You can bet your butt now that that's not happening anymore after COVID. And so I'm also losing about a friend a year to completed suicides or to overdose or drinking themselves to death, which is a mental health event. And so I'm tired of it. So I did a few things. I got a mental health first aid certificate. And then also, because of some of the things I've been involved in, I got a certificate through the Prison Mindfulness Institute, and I go to Cook County Jail to meditate with detainees, because I mean, by all intents and purposes, I should be in prison. And so, and then I did my yoga teacher training, and then my recovery path was Buddhist based. So there's a lot of compassion and trauma informed. I took all that and I put it into my life as a chef, and I put it into helping people and being very open and honest and vulnerable about what I've gone through. Not everybody knows the whole story because that's my business, but I'm open enough where we can talk to each other. But I'm also not a clinician, and I needed professional guidance on what to do after people are honest with me. And that's when I saw 86 to Silence and wanted to get involved, because it was going to provide me with a clear blueprint of what I can do to help other people, or guide them to what's the next step after we remove this stigma about mental health, or we're talking about proactive suicide prevention. What do we do if someone's in active ideation, or how do we remove that stigma if someone's scared to talk about what they're going through, or they come from a cultural background that's different than mine, that's even more stigmatizing to talk about these struggles. So I asked Hope for the Day, what are you guys doing? Can I get involved? And Mike and I hooked up, and Joel and I hooked up. And I did a lot of training with these guys, you know, a bunch of a couple of surrogate sessions, and then a lot of practicing to refine where we are right now in terms of our message. And we've delivered it a couple times as a monthly, like presentation, and we're still refining it. And there's a lot of people that want to be involved, so we'll develop them so we can hear everybody's voice and every positions in the industry. And it's needed so badly for us to be able in the kitchens and in the restaurants to look each other in the eye and say, hey, I'm actually not okay today, just wanted to let you know. And it's been stigmatized for so long, and I'm not having it anymore. I'm not accepting that as a kitchen culture that's acceptable to me or anyone that I work with anymore. It's just no one deserves to suffer. I didn't deserve to suffer, and you don't deserve to suffer, and there's ways out of it. And I think that peer-led support, which is a lot of what I do with my recovery, is mutual aid and peer-led support, is the wave, man, because we understand each other. We speak the same language. And so we can really help each other up into the point that someone might require professional help.
Hell yeah. Wow, man. Jeannine, I'm really just always happy to be able to work and learn from you while we do the work. And I'm glad you noted that, it is kind of a fluid thing, because the industry is changing. It has to change, and the world itself is going to be unfolding in a new way. And while we wait, there's a bunch of really neat shit happening out there that we're going to talk about in a second with Ed and Juan. But just to give one of our other guests a second real quick, Emmaline, I wanted you to tell everybody about what you do with Sound Nutrition. Why did you want to get into being a nutritionist? Yeah, like, and how does that support people's mental health?
Yeah, thank you. So a little background. Many years ago in high school, I became a vegetarian, and I was raised in a Greek family. You wouldn't know from my last name because of my dad's side, but I was raised by a Greek mother. And so, of course, as soon as I went vegetarian, there was an uproar. You're going to starve to death. And so I started reading about nutrition and just trying to understand how to best meet all of my protein needs and how to best nourish myself as a vegetarian. And that led me to just become fascinated by the subject. So it kind of became something, it was the only thing I could see myself doing. So I became a dietitian about 8 or 9 years ago, and then got a master's degree in integrative medicine as well, which was a very heavily research-based master's degree. So I've done a lot of research, particularly in the neurology field. So I worked in neurology prior to starting my own business, and studied a lot about the effect of food on the brain, and of course that includes on mood disorders. A lot of studies on the Mediterranean diet, on plant-based diets. And after about 4 or 5 years working as a dietitian, I decided to start my own business called Sound Nutrition. Sound Nutrition provides nutrition services, anything from pre-show food, riders, tour bus stock, to touring musicians. So as you can imagine, right now, the touring industry isn't very lively. But I've been able to pivot a little bit, working with clients one-on-one, doing more outreach, more free resources, and donating my time, which has actually been really enriching in many ways, and a great way to spend my time. But as the music industry starts to gear up again, I'll be diving back into that. So it's everything from sending dietitians out on tour, planning meals from afar, working with catering, or working with personal chefs with the artists that have those. A lot of the artists I work with, though, don't have that service available to them yet, or there just aren't budgets for that yet. So it's, working with the venues, making sure that healthy food is being provided for artists, both before their show at load in, during, the post-show hours where the only things open are Domino's or wings places. And so unfortunately a lot of the post-show food is not healthy. So it's really encompasses everything from a wellness perspective, but really focused on nutrition.
That's cool. And it's so awesome that you get to impact the music industry in a similar way that Hope for the Day's very beginnings were just up in the music industry, trying to talk to as many people that would listen. And now we have the ear of some of the more traditional mental health organizations out there. We've been able to, partner with all the NAMI chapters and AFSP and like these very, very significant people doing the work in mental health spaces that maybe in the beginning they were like, who's this Johnny guy and why does he swear so much? And are people going to listen to this? And as a matter of fact, yeah. It helps when you go to them and you talk to them like another human being. And I imagine that your consultation, your support to the artists on the road and stuff like that does develop like a cool, you're a caregiver kind of in a way, and you're helping them.
Poor mom. Yeah.
Take care of themselves on the road, which can be kind of rife with pitfalls of nutrition, but just health overall, like not sleeping right, not eating right, all of that. So
yeah, there's so many things that come along with being a touring musician, and musicians already are at an increased risk of struggling with their mental health, which I'd be curious if that statistic is similar in the restaurant industry as well. I think that any kind of creative pursuits, there tends to be a higher incidence. And so it's, of course, wellness in general needs to be paid attention to, but mental health in particular in that community.
Yeah, I mean, like eating habits for sure, I bet impact the culinary world. Yeah, you want to jump on that, Jeannine?
I would say that from what I know, that in the restaurant industry, we're the number one industry for substance use disorder. And substance use disorder is absolutely a mental health event. Anytime you're using any kind of like alcohol, weed, any kind of drug to alter your reality, that's a mental health event. So I would say that that absolutely relates.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when I'm doing education with artists who are performers, and when I'm doing it with restaurants and people from the industry, there's so many parallels that often get drawn. So it's cool to have you guys all here, and I'm sure we'll probably get more into like maybe the impacts of that gut health and what you're eating and how that can support you. But before we give all that away too much early in the episode, I'd like to bring on, well, I'm gonna have Ed talk for a little bit first, and then I'm gonna bring on Juan, but they're involved in a lot of cool things together. And then I know that there's some additional things that Juan brings to the table as an individual artist and a performer in his own right. So, hey, Ed, do you wanna talk about maybe first the community of the future and everything underneath the community of the future kind of umbrella?
Yeah, sure. I mean, the community of the future is like a term that we've been pursuing, a kind of concept we've been pursuing ever since we moved to the South Side from our former base in the late 90s and early 2000s in Wicker Park and Humboldt Park. But basically, what we're trying to do here in the neighborhood of Bridgeport is to create various spaces and platforms for people to engage with, participating in various forms of cultural production. We have an art space called Co-Prosperity that is a large gallery that also houses our offices from where we do our various publications and other media projects, plan festivals, plan exhibitions, plan programs, in partnership with our for-profit businesses. So Public Media Institute is the nonprofit organization that runs these publications, our art space, and it also, during this recent COVID-19 shutdown, we initiated a project called the Quarantine Times, which was a project in which artists and hospitality workers could speak about what was happening in their lives once the pandemic caused a shutdown. So we created this website called quarantinetimes.org, and we were able to work with some of the funding that we had that we couldn't spend for programming in our art space because everything was shut down and we were canceling shows, and with some funders and private donations to create a program where we paid artists and writers and chefs and basically many different creative people a stipend to create an entry for the website. So we were able to give $500 a day to people to write something during the pandemic's shutdown period that was from the last 3 months or so. We started it in March 20th. While we were working on that platform, we started it, obviously the universe stopped. We also owned a bunch of, we also work on a bunch of businesses like Kimski's, Maria's, and Mars. We had to furlough most of the people who worked there, who were front of the house or servers or bartenders, et cetera. And we were able to maintain a kind of bare bones staff. But while we're down here in Bridgeport, we've been cooperating with lots of different organizations and spaces and people down here. Juan has been a host to many chefs who do their pop-ups at Kimski as a way to kind of like beta test or kickstart their dreams of opening restaurants. In fact, many of his friends opened up restaurants after doing their pop-ups at Kimski. And unfortunately, during the pandemic, many of them had to close their restaurants. So we hosted Juan and I let people use our kitchens to host doing their pop-up meals. But essentially this community of the future thing that you're talking about is related to how we operate as a nonprofit and how do we operate our for-profit businesses. So for example, Mars Community Brewing supports the nonprofit by doing fundraisers and events. We opened up the Community of the Future Farmers Market behind the parking lot of Mars. And then recently, as we were working on the quarantine times and trying to find direct support to artists and writers and chefs for writing, or at least we thought about what Tom Colicchio, one of the chefs from, I don't even know what the show was, famous chef, Top Chef, yeah.
Top Chef, yeah.
And as the pandemic shut down the restaurant industry and caused massive havoc and destruction throughout, the economy all over the place, he had a suggestion that, it would be great if actually, instead of serving people in our restaurants, that restaurants were used to serve people who are in need. So we decided to create a pilot project in which we would serve about 600 meals a week. So 3 days a week, we used our kitchens at Mars and at Kimski to produce 200 meals that we then shared with residents of senior citizen homes down the block in Halstead, with food pantries in the back of the yards in Pilsen, as well as healthcare workers who are working in the emergency room at University of Illinois in Chicago. We also allow people to stop by Kimski every Wednesday at 12:30 p.m. to pick up a meal. And we've just done this through kind of grassroots posters and prints or flyers on the street, as well as using social media. But the interesting thing about this program is that we're able to hire chefs who lost their gigs, keep some of our super part-time employees employed with other working on the community kitchen thing. And we're also purchasing food from local farms that we were always buying from anyways. So we were always trying to support the local agriculture economy. And now and a lot of them were hit because all the restaurants were closed. Many of them were about to go out of the business. So we're trying to figure out a kind of ecology where we're supporting workers, farmers, industry workers who cook, as well as bakeries. And we create these meals, and then we work with those partners in this kind of nonprofit sector to help get it directly to people who would want those meals. And we're especially happy that we are able to create very nutritional meals. And the team is made up of chefs from Moms, which is used to have a food hall, Juan Kim, of course, Thatu, and then other chefs have come in to create these special meals for our program. So the Community of the Future thing really relates to this kind of infrastructure that we've built here over the past decade or so, in which we have these businesses that support cultural products, provides a space for people to raise funds. We do fundraisers, we do collaboration beers, we do community nights, we do soup nights at the gallery in which people come, 30 chefs come and make soup, and all the proceeds go to a different org. So really this kind of social mission, working for social justice and working for expanding kind of like the world we want to see as a primary thing for us. And it all happened just based on these connections you have with your friends and family. Now, when you were talking about people in the industry being some of the most at-risk people for mental health issues, you're absolutely right. Majority of my life, I've been working with artists. I started off as an artist and started a magazine in the early 90s and worked with a bunch of weirdos and freaks and musicians and performers and totally wigged out people, partying our asses off, like having incredible happenings, usually a hybridization of art, technology, activism, and having a good time, which typically we were engaged in all kinds of, alcohol and drug use. And throughout that time, you could see how many people who were already artists, or if you're working in a restaurant, you're a precarity worker. The kind of like coercion that living under capitalism presents to an individual already creates a massive havoc on your life. And your precarity as a person generating income to survive, let alone to pay for your art, creates lots of issues and problems within our communities. And, that sense of like connection with each other and working together in these spaces that we kind of create was an unconscious attempt towards trying to create a community and a sense of safety and a place where you can engage with each other. And even today, even with the economic decision of paying cooks and different workers and farmers, et cetera, is a way to kind of alleviate that kind of like stress and anguish that comes in your life when you are completely unable to work, you're unemployed, or you can't do anything. And we hope that we do it in a way that's not as coercive as the regular restaurant business maybe does stuff. But when I hear about these kind of like situations or kind of cultures in restaurants that are supposedly happening everywhere, it really is weird to me because, you know, we're a small family business. I worked at my mom's bar together. You know, our mental health issues were just being a dysfunctional family, the normal shit. And then even Juan's kind of like ability to create a kitchen and an atmosphere that's not as coercive and shitty is something I'm used to. And, you know, we don't have a huge separation between front and the back of the house at the kitchen. Everyone shares wages, shares tips. And in this time of COVID, it really is about, hey, we're all equally in this together, this shithole, and we have to figure out a way to work together to get through it all. So it's interesting, like even being more conscious of, because of the COVID, we know everyone's affected. Because of this pandemic, we know everyone's completely destabilized. And watching people's behavior since the pandemic broke out has been very instructive to me. So I find myself questioning, well, what the hell's wrong with me? I obviously have a lot of power. I have a lot of cultural capital. I have a lot of prestige capital. I wield it through all these various platforms and art spaces, and et cetera, that I have. And being aware that my mere, just barely being present can make maybe people feel uneasy. Me saying things like, please put your mask on, could maybe really make people feel uneasy. So I personally have learned through this crisis that we have to have a lot more empathy, and we have to do more check-ins with each other. So I constantly ask my employees or colleagues if everything's going well. You don't have to, please don't work. You've overworked this week. Please take some days off. I'm actually more in tune, and I'm usually thinking of myself as an empathetic person, but I'm more in tune with the horrors of everyday existence, especially during this time. And I feel like all I can do is try to do and use these platforms that we have and share whatever we have with anyone, and try to help them either incubate a concept for a business, or give them a booth at the market, or encourage someone to start that thing they thought they wanted to do, or lend a hand and support various projects. Because in the end, it's like, if we don't use this moment to develop a way of life that we want to see for the rest of our future, we'll never have a chance like this again. This is the time where things are breaking and can be rebuilt. And it really is up to us to rebuild them and show this world that we want to see. So, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what we're up to here. We have these places, these businesses, we're using our resources for stuff. And even like with working with Juan, he's like, yo, it's purely through conversation, through texting, like, this is an interesting thing happening. Maybe we should try it. And also, we've been able to fail so many times. We're not afraid to fail and screw up anymore. So we'll do something and it totally sucks, and we'll do it again. And we're not going to feel bad about it. One of the jokes I usually tell people when I talk to them is that I'm a successful failure, and just learning how to fail, it's beautiful. And it doesn't really matter what anyone thinks or what happens, as long as you learn something through the experience.
It's amazing, man. Thank you for expanding on this overarching concept of what community of the future means for you. I tried to give some people some ideas of where they can go to check out those different initiatives and learn more on their own. And that all will be listed in the details of the YouTube description and stuff like that.
Yeah,
but,
thanks for letting me share about what we're doing with people, because I usually think no one gives a shit.
I think that's great. And I'm happy to hear that I can finally eat Thatu food again, because I was a regular over at Politan Row before it shut down. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh, I'm so glad you know about them. They're wonderful. Margaret.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember when Margaret started working with Juan, and Juan had to show her how to use a knife. Sorry, Juan. I didn't want to like chime in on that, but I remember those days. I was like, what's up with Margaret? What is she doing working here, Juan? He's like, I don't know, man.
Moms and Thatu are both just incredible. I really miss it. So I'm glad to hear that there's somewhere to go.
Yeah, where do you live? What part of the neighborhood are you in?
I'm in West Loop, so I'm right by Politan Row.
you'll be able to like get their stuff pretty easy.
Oh,
They're actually based out of Bridgeport now. Mom's actually runs the Mars Kitchen, and Margaret is actually does pop-ups at Kimski periodically.
oh, great. Oh, good.
Yeah.
Speaking of Kimski, Juan, what's up, man? What's your favorite thing that you get to do since you have your hands in so many cool things? Like, do you have a favorite thing that you like to do? Oh shit, I'll unmute you. My man. It's got me asking to unmute you.
Were you able to read my lips when I said I still have me on mute? Well, the question was, what's my favorite thing to do, just in general, or during this, or
I'm just talking.
or...
I guess it should be more specific, but you have your hands in a lot of different things that Ed was just talking about, and like as far as being involved in Kimski and Maria's and Mars, and and even making beautiful walls of graffiti artwork, and mixing records and making people dance. Like what's the one that kind of wins out, or is that a loaded question?
It's not a loaded question. I think all of these things kind of play with each other in a way, because the way I was raised was that just hard work and practice will get you to a good place, right? So each one of these things is something that kind of, the disciplines are the same for all three arts, in my opinion. You have to be dedicated, you have to do research, and you have to truly give a shit and be passionate about it. So I think out of the three, it's like picking a child, because certain days
Sure.
cooking works out way better. Certain days painting by myself outside somewhere, or even just at home, is a great escape away from everything. And even just listening to music, or picking music, or playing music on a loudspeaker somewhere, it all has its own merits. And it's I'm thankful that I can do those things to kind of I guess scapegoat each other in a way if things get too crazy, like pre-COVID, post, during COVID. Right now it's just it's whatever we can do to utilize our creativity to help others. That's kind of like the action plan that I think Ed and I are trying to implement, and he already touched on a lot of the things that we're about. And having a platform like a restaurant in an up and coming neighborhood is key to introducing the community, the media community, and the community as far as Chicago goes as a whole, to places like that too, and places like Mars, places like Moms and stuff like that. And I think having an art, and then we paint the backside of Kimski as well. Mike and Maria reluctantly let me paint the first wall because I thought I was gonna go crazy when we were opening Kimski, and I kind of told him, like, I'm gonna fucking do this. If you don't like it, I'll just paint over it. It's kind of the idea
Right.
that Ed was talking about. Like, we just do it. We just do things, and if it sucks, we just won't do it again. It's not a big deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think you just kind of have to take chances and just see what comes out of it. And then things like I think Ed and Mike and Maria have created this little economy and ecosystem within this like 4-block radius of Bridgeport that that attracts a lot of people from other parts of town that might not know what's happening in the South Side. I
Right.
feel like the way the city is laid out these days, it's just like everyone's meant to stay in their own little bubble, in their own little mile radius. And we're trying to create programming. And I live by Wrigley Field right now currently, so I'm nowhere near Bridgeport. And I live, born and raised a North Sider. So to see another neighborhood that feels like it's far removed, seeing all these great events and all these all this great programming, it's what the Chicago I grew up in. It feels like the Chicago that I want to be a part of and I want to kind of promote. So things like the Community of the Future Market, the kitchen, even just their own employment system is meant to really kind of help others in need provide a livable wage, and just all in all, just make sure that we're all looking out for each other in a way. You know, I have a small team at Kimski, but you know, everyone that's gone through and worked there, have done pop-ups, you know, have all been really positive people. We've always been, you know, one to promote, like, hey, if you don't feel good, just stay the fuck home. You know, it's just at the end of the day, you just have to kind of think like, what's really serious, right? Like it's just fucking food, right? I mean, in that sense, it's like, you shouldn't have to feel like, you know, you have to come in to work when it's something that's, you know, there's so many other options for food, and great options at that. So we don't want to make anyone feel pressured to have to perform in this, like, you know, a linear type atmosphere, or like, you know, a turn and burn situation, you know. Did it work out all the time? No. You know, some people have taken advantage of the system, and that's completely fine. You know, we just kind of shrug it off and say, man, that was pretty fucked up, huh? And then just kind of move on, and you just hope that the next person won't do that. But you know, it's not a perfect system, and really nothing is. So we just kind of try to embrace that and just kind of roll with the punches, I guess.
Well, it's like,
so I don't know if that answered your
we're
question.
trying to break it. We're trying to break the wheel. Like you see that it's fucked, and you want to do something. You want to do something. You want to not just sit there and do nothing. And then you take this creative approach at every turn. You and Ed. It's great.
And you know, we don't mind if the wheel looks a little oval. You know, it's fine. It still rolls. It still works. You know, we'll just, you know, I don't know. We'll change the body of the car to make the oval wheel work. You know what I mean? That's our mentality with approaching a lot of the projects that we do. Ed and I have done some really terrible shit before, project-wise. It just didn't work out. But you know, we can look back and laugh at it now and then. But you know, we still helped someone out at least. You know what I mean? Even if it helped out one or two people, like that's one or two people that wasn't helped before, and that's fine with us.
Oh yeah. Well, so off of that, I want to pose a question to the group. I know that the pizza, fried chicken, ice cream pop-up is going on this weekend, and so you
know, it's not a pop-up anymore. It's a real.
It's not a pop-up anymore. It's a real thing forever now. Huh?
Yeah, it's its own restaurant now. It'll be open like 2 or 3 days a week until we get through this.
Oh my God. Well, the reason I bring that up is because it seems like for me, pizza, fried chicken, ice cream, I'm thinking my comfort foods. I'm thinking the things that I sometimes turn to when I'm emotionally needing a boost. Maybe it's not the healthiest thing in the world for me, but it does have like a soothing kind of quality to it. So Juan first, and then everybody else. It's gonna be kind of a free for all. What is your like go-to for that, like kind of, even if it's not a healthy thing, like what makes you feel good when you're not okay? And you know,
that's a really good question. I know I've been known to stress eat many times. It's usually when I'm working. I used to have a really bad habit of eating Maldon salt just by itself and chewing on salt, which is like just fucking awful for your system and sodium. But these days, if there's gummies or candy around, or like lifesavers, like the mint jams, I will chew the shit out of those, or eat
all right.
or gummies, sour gummies particularly. That's my go-to comfort stress food.
Cool. Actually, sometimes I grab for the gummies, or you know,
it's the best.
Shapes. Oh yeah.
Feels good on the gums.
Yeah, see,
who else wants to jump in on that?
I go for the seeds, like the nonstop seed. So I'll have like 4 or 5 of them and just sit there and suck on them and then slowly crack them. I'm a salt guy. Like my wife's the sweetie. She likes the sweet stuff. I'm like, nah, and I'll go with salt. So I'm usually with Juan with the gout flare-ups.
The gout flare-ups. Pete,
you want to guarantee?
All kidding aside, the gout hurts like hell, and it does. It's purines, I think, is the deal.
That's great.
But let's go to Ed real fast, and we'll go Emmaline. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really lucky. Since there's so many chefs working around us at all times, I'm pretty much super blessed. I mean, maybe the reason I'm doing all this stuff is just so I could eat this food and have it in proximity to me. I think that's really what's going on. And that's really the only thing. The most important thing is, what are we eating today? But I love it when my wife makes her sausage soup, or if I'm not feeling great, I really just want like a soup or a ramen thing personally. And of course, I'm now, for some reason, this CBD elixir that we make has been like, I've never had so many of these goddamn things in my life.
Those
So
things,
I'm totally pumped with CBD.
Yeah, if you drink 3 in a row, the day changes. Like,
Okay.
Well, I got to tell you, I wasn't a believer in CBD until we made this coffee plus CBD beverage called Tokyo Drift. And then I finally got it. I'm like, okay, it does chill and focus your shit. So
homeostasis.
I'm a believer. And it's just straight, not a jittery high.
Yeah.
We should make some CBD stuff for you guys, some of your coffee.
Hey,
I want to now.
talk to the strategic partnerships guy right there, Joel.
Oh, I know. I know what this is all about.
Emmaline, and then Jeannine, what did you guys got?
Okay. So, well, first of all, I need to try that CBD elixir. My all-time favorite morning coffee is coffee, dark matter oftentimes, coffee with some CBD and some lion's mane mushroom, which also really focuses, kind of like dials you in, but takes away some of those coffee jitters. But for comfort food, I'm definitely a sweet tooth. So I would say chocolate. I'm fortunate that I like dark chocolate because I kind of excuse it as, oh, this is good for me.
One little square, just one square.
Yeah, well, more than a square. And then lately I've been in an ice cream phase, but I'm all about harm reduction. So I buy ice cream that's a little lower in sugar. I love this brand Nadamu right now, based out of Austin, Texas. And it's like naturally lower sugar. They don't put any like fake sugar stuff in it. Instead, it's just a little bit lower in sugar and it's dairy free. So I like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
And dairy's like inflammatory for a lot of people, and they don't even realize it, right?
Yeah. Well, I got to suggest the Plant Pop lines from Pretty Cool Ice Cream. That's who does our ice cream.
Yeah, the Plant Pops are great.
Yeah, you got to do the Plant Pops from Pretty Cool Ice Cream.
All right, I might have to order some of those tonight on Foxtrot.
Do it. They're a great local business.
Oh, if you order from Foxtrot, then you can order the Mars CBD stuff. It's all there. All of our Mars products are at
There you go.
Okay.
MARZ.
I throw some kale chips in for good measure, and I know what my late night order will be tonight.
Emmaline's gonna treat herself tonight. How about you, Jeannine?
Today I was feeling some kind of way, so I had 2 Crunch Wrap Supremes and a steak soft taco and a enormous Baja Blast.
All right.
I needed it. It helped.
Sounds delicious.
For real. And then
that sounds amazing.
It was amazing. It's even more amazing when you get it delivered and it costs $12 extra. So you choose more. So it's it's an experience because it costs so much.
The carbon footprint tastes delicious.
Yeah. I feel like all food fits, so I make sure that I balance everything out. It was perfect today.
And well, you hit on a key word there, balance. Like there are absolutely individuals that struggle with eating as an unhealthy coping mechanism and stress eating, while we can all do it to varying degrees. For some individuals, this can be a part of their mental health experience. And it can be layered, very layered with things like body dysmorphia and other types of diagnoses that require professional levels of support and care, but also a mental health component. And if we think just not that far back, different types of eating disorders and things like that were only kind of exclusively reserved for those that can identified as female. And it would take people in competitive weight cutting kind of sports like MMA and boxing and stuff to die. And those men passing away was just like, oh yeah, it actually is a problem here too. And it can't just be, hey, we're going to adjust your diet. We need to also address whatever's going on with your mental health to also support you in that. However, a lot of people they use what they choose to eat as as a way to balance out. Like, so if they're having a pretty good week and they're trying to, you know, get their beach bod on or whatever, or they're just like maybe trying to manage some other physical stuff that they got going on by making some choices, taking some disciplines with their eating habits to support their health and wellness. What are some of the stuff that like makes you guys feel like good, like makes you feel like you're about ready to, you know, just tear down, you know, just go for a run or whatever? Like, what gives you good energy and makes you feel like kind of proud of your choices and stuff like that when it comes to the food you eat? Anybody feel free?
I'm gonna go first since I'm like the least professional cooker dude in the whole thing. I will tell you that I feel better when I actually make the food, and this is where I'm usually like the annoying friend. Like I text Juan at 2 a.m. Juan, how do I make the beef taste Korean? Because I'm honest, I want to eat something that my friend told me how to make the way that he told me how to make it. And then for some reason it feels less shitty than I'm like taking a packet and like sprinkling like a ranch packet on something like a token white dude would do. Like I want to learn, I want to be better. Teach me how to like not suck at being a freaking food preparer for myself. So I think that when I make it myself and I intentionally take the advice of people smarter than me, which is everyone here, for some reason, I feel far better fueled and better able to like, I use the hell out of leftovers now, especially when I had asked somebody, hey, how do I make that? So that's something from a non-professional cooker dude where I'm like, for real, if I get the tips from the dudes that know what they're doing, I tend to take it a little bit more serious.
That's great.
I agree with you, man. I feel the same way. I'm like the worst cook, the laziest person on earth. I suck. And if I'm able to accomplish one good meal, it's very fulfilling. And I've also bugged Juan for recipes and advice. We're lucky that we got friends like this.
Thanks,
And
Juan.
I just turned my phone off. I just turn my phone off when that shit happens. I think Joel touched on a good point. I think, especially during this time, I think it's important for a lot of people to kind of just pick up the frying pan or, you know, that cooking vessel every once in a while and just kind of, I feel like part of the health benefits of cooking for yourself at home is you get to control the sodium and sugar, which I think is a huge factor. You know, like when you dine out, it's meant to be an occasion or some kind of treat for yourself. So thinking in terms of, you know, being at home and providing sustenance for yourself, I think, you know, with that comes a little bit of, you know, the curiosity, for like, you know, trying out certain ingredients and controlling the outside factors such as like, you know, fats and sugars and sodium and stuff and things of that. I think that plays a huge role in making yourself, even if it's for just mental clarity. I think if it's just knowing that you're touching everything and you're in control of everything, I think really that's the kind of thing that helped me out during this, throughout this whole thing, just cooking at home a lot. And like Joel said, like utilizing leftovers and just even just having the knowledge of, hey, shit, I get to make a new dish for something I made last night. It really does help you feel more confident in a small way. And I think that way you motherfuckers will stop texting me too. So that'll help me out a lot.
Are you guys doing a cookbook too? Did I read that somewhere, or am I imagining that for the community
Fuck
kitchen?
no.
No?
I can't even write an email properly.
Okay.
Oh, you know what? There's a book coming out from the Quarantine Times.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, which does include the recipes by the chefs who contributed to it.
That's where I must have read that, because I also subscribe to the Quarantine Times. It's good shit, and you should get you some. Absolutely. All right. Well, that's amazing as far as Juan and Joel's piece on that, where you're like touching it, and you know where it's coming from, you know what you're doing to it, the sugar, the salt. That's great. What about Jeannine, Emmaline? What do you think on this?
I also, you know, cook at home every day, and I think that that's very important. My first meal of the day is always vegan. I'd make a smoothie with ground up oatmeal and flax and good fats. I ferment my own coconut yogurt with probiotics. So I add that in there, and peanut butter and different things. But so I know that my first meal of the day is super balanced and it's plant-based, and so and it has good probiotics. And so all hell may break loose after that, like with the Taco Bell today, but at least in the morning I provide myself a really good base. And then I grow my own food in season. I've been part of a community garden for the past 9 years in Chicago, and I even like I gave a bunch of oregano to Randy and Kelly to use in some of the community kitchen meals from my
Cool. Full
yeah.
circle.
And then,
Awesome. You're
and then
buddies with those guys?
yeah, Kelly and I were both chefs at the Virgin Hotel. We've been friends ever since. About Kelly and I are really close friends. It's been about 5 years.
Oh my God. I love those guys, man.
I know. And then the other thing I do is I've been a beekeeper in Chicago for about 15 years. And so having my own honey, um, like raw, unpasteurized honey is really helpful for me with my allergies, and it controls like how I consume sugar, and using honey with a decreased insulin spike is nice for me because I eat everything. I don't discriminate, but it's cooking at home and knowing how to cook gives me so much control over it's just what they said already. It's exactly what they said, except I don't put less salt in my food at home. I use a lot of salt.
Thank you for your candor, Chef Jeannine.
I have to agree with Jeannine. I mean, I usually start the day with a smoothie, especially in the summer. In the wintertime, I tend to crave, warmer things. But in the summertime especially, I usually start the day with a smoothie. And leafy green vegetables make me feel really good. So I'm fortunate in that I actually like healthy food, and I balance everything out. I try to eat healthy most of the time and then still enjoy the things that I like to eat. But yeah, leafy greens, I would say, make me feel good, and it's easy. I'll throw them onto a frozen pizza, even if I'm making a frozen pizza, or if I'm making an omelet, I'll throw some leafy greens into an omelet. But most of the time, they're coming into a smoothie first thing with some flaxseed usually as well. Usually some sort of protein, a vegan protein, hemp seeds oftentimes as well, and then typically a little bit of fruit, usually like berries or some pineapple. This morning had some parsley and fresh ginger root in there as well. So it was kind of like a salad in a glass, but I enjoy it. So it was good. So I think you're muted, Mike.
It's fun to play with those things, like as if you were like painting or something like that, where you got all those different flavors, just like you got a myriad of colors that you can do your thing with. I think that expression, that expressive part of cooking, for me, was what made me so in love with just like watching in awe when my mom and her dad would be cooking and like teaching me lasagna and teaching me how to make brajol and the meatballs and all this stuff, and just try and pass on that family history through the food. And it gives you an opportunity to spend some time with your people and just chat and feed each other. Like it's just really nothing that's more like simple kind of love and support, I feel like. So but as far as the emotional benefits of that cooking together, that's one thing. But since you have Emmaline, you know about some of the stuff that maybe I have no clue about. So let me ask you, as far as the intersection of like mental health and the food we eat, what are some of like the biggest things that you would want to tell like a layman that's trying to maybe make a couple choices with what they decide to put in? So like if they want to think of themselves as like a Lamborghini and they need that premium gasoline, like how can that support making your machine? Give us some tips. Like I'm just like a total moron that's never talked to a nutritionist, and you want to give me some of those greatest hits. You got something for me?
Absolutely. I mean, the Mediterranean diet, which, I'm a little biased as someone of Greek descent, but we do know from research that the Mediterranean diet not only promotes better cognition, better memory, lower risk of chronic diseases like diabetes, cancers, Alzheimer's, And then also boosts the mood. So a lot more of the research in the last few years on the Mediterranean diet has been focusing not just on cognitive function and how your brain, works and how efficient you are during the day, but also more so on the mood boosting parts of it. So reduced depression, reduced anxiety. And of course, people certainly still need their medications or whatever their treatment plan might include, but we find that food can play a huge role in mental health. So in particular, leafy greens, like I mentioned before, some other hallmarks of the Mediterranean diet, berries, blueberries in particular, flaxseed, walnuts, all of those omega-3 fats you can get from plants. You can also get from fish. You can get omega-3s from fish. Other healthy fats like extra virgin olive oil. So probably a lot of the stuff that our ancestors ate, as Greek and Italian people of Greek and Italian descent, but really more whole foods, avoiding processed stuff, and trying to incorporate more plant-based things with small judicious use of things like red meat or sweets or even poultries and dairy and things like that. It's really a pretty plant-focused diet, certainly with fish and lots of healthy fat. So I feel like, I don't want to go on too long, but I feel like fat, is something that's particularly been demonized in the past. But we as a society are becoming a lot less fat phobic as research is starting to show that there are plenty of great healthy anti-inflammatory fats that can really boost mood and cognition as well.
It's awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for shedding some light on that scientific piece, because I know for me in my own mental health journey and understanding that some of the things that I experience inside, they're just related to my medical experience. And for like the longest time, for like the first 30 years of my life, I would fight like hell to hide all of it for shame, for guilt, for fear of judgment. And I know that's the experience for like 90% of people even today, because stigma and the most damaging impacts of stigma persist in the modern day. So it's really great to remind myself of little science bits like, oh, it's a brain. We all have one. It runs the show. It's the big boss organ. It produces stuff and controls the production of a lot of complicated stuff that you don't have to understand as a community member. You're not a neuroscientist. But if you can start to break it down that, hey, if an organ's not producing the right amount of stuff, well, it can manifest as some significant impacts to your quality of life. And for me, it's like racing thoughts or sleep impact, or even in most severe cases, like I get a little delusional, a little fixated on things that are maybe not based in reality and not going to keep me safe. So understanding that those things don't make me crazy or less than, or not strong enough to deal with it, has been like this constant practice of unlearning. That significant chunk of time of my life where people are like, nah, you can't talk about this. So using that with nutrition too is a really great way to kind of just fight back. I know I'm not feeling good right now, so I'm going to put something in my body that potentially puts some of that good brain dump going on, like my dopamine, my serotonin. And I think that how you laid it out, just like leafy greens on a frozen pizza.
Yeah.
While that doesn't seem like a huge life-changing thing when you say it out loud, just those little steps, those little changes, taking
Meeting
care
people
of
where they
yourself.
are. Yeah, meeting people where they are. And I think that, I know for me personally, it's been such a benefit to eat healthier for my mental health, but also, making those small measurable changes, because I know that with mental health, so many people struggle with that first step. And, it's kind of this self-defeating cycle of, oh, I know I'll feel better if I go work out, or, oh, I know I'll feel better if I eat something healthy. But sometimes the barrier and just like the cost to doing that when you're struggling with your mental health feels so immense. It just feels like it's so difficult to get yourself to do that. So that's why I really try and meet people where they are and say, what if it's not go make yourself some nice salad? What if it's take some pre-rinsed spinach that, is in one of those clamshells that people buy ready to go? And what if it's just throwing that on top of a frozen pizza instead of just eating the frozen pizza with the sausage? So
it takes one small step in in that direction and make some choices for yourself. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
And as we wind down the show tonight, I just wanted to just take some time to talk about the fact that these are challenging times, and food scarcity has not just started because of COVID. There are populations that have been marginalized and historically disenfranchised time and time again. And as a result, we have things that people refer to as food deserts, food apartheid. That's a good one. And in general, just this whole idea of not having your basic needs met if you look a certain way or you live a certain place, and how fucked up that is. So before we get to the video at the end of our episode, because I want to just ask you guys kind of your opinions on some stuff with that. There is something called the Poverty is Violent food drive that Hope for the Day and Sip of Hope was able to support and amplify through our platforms. And we were able to feed 1,000 families in Bronzeville, Hyde Park, Inglewood, and I think Washington Park was the other one, neighborhoods of Chicago, where this is very much the reality that many people live with. So, and that's not going to stop with just a one-off. People are going to still need these things. People are still going to need their basic needs met. And if you're hungry, how can you rightfully be able to proactively engage or take care of your mental health? So, what do you guys think? Obviously, Ed, you guys are already mobilizing and turning some of your resources to that, to sustainability, to taking care of your people and stuff like that. But I'm curious to hear from all of you what better can look like in the future as the industry continues to evolve, our societies continue to evolve in the wake of COVID. Jeannine, you got your hand raised. Why don't you go first?
The reason why I raised my hand is because when I used to teach sustainability to culinary students at Kendall College, and what I was taught is to teach them, part of it was teaching them about food deserts, which is calculated by no grocery store within a mile of you. But now, and that was a couple years ago, but now what I've learned is that a desert makes it sound like it was an accident, and none of that. Access to food is never an accident. Those are decisions that grocery stores are making to not go into those areas because they don't see them as profitable. And so the language is changing to food apartheid, because it's not that, oh, there just isn't a grocery store here. Those populations are deliberately being deprived of access to food. And you see what happens with what kind of food's available at the corner stores. It's easier to buy a gun than it is to buy a fresh tomato. And so they're growing up on hot Takis and blue drink and getting, adult onset diabetes and breasts in young men at a super young age. All that's calculated. What the answer is, I don't know. I'm still in the angry stage, but I do believe that it might help us to get away from the term food desert and call it what it is. Now, if anybody has more education on this, please correct me, but that's where I'm at right now.
Hell yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And I have always admired your passion and your ability to kind of shine some light on maybe one of the perceptual blind spots I still have. We all have them. And the more we listen to understand, and the more we're willing to, be a part of using whatever privilege you might have to raise up the voice of somebody who is less of it. I have white privilege, I have straight privilege, I have cis privilege, I have able-bodied privilege, and in some degrees I have socioeconomic privilege. And I'll be damned if I'm going to sit here and do nothing right now when, like Ed said so well, we have this golden opportunity to not go back to some bullshit, but to go forward to some new shit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just want to chime in real quick. The idea that, like, before the podcast started, Emmaline was kind of talking about some of the work that she does as far as working with musicians as they're going on tour. As a recovering musician myself, I think one of the things that I noticed almost immediately upon setting out on a tour, whether it was just a weekend, 3 or 4 dates, or a couple weeks, or it was a week and you go back for a day and a week and you go back for a day, was that you get like this kind of gut rot where you had said hot Takis and blue drink. Jeannine, when you are driving hundreds of miles a day, getting less than an hour of sleep in a non-moving vehicle, and you're eating out of gas stations, it's the same type of impact. The work that Christopher Lamarck has been doing with the Poverty is Violent food drive kind of opened my eyes to the fact that I'm realizing that a lot of what I was subjecting myself to on the road, quote unquote, is something that I had the privilege of going home and getting a warm meal for my mom when I returned. But it's also kind of in relation to the whole pandemic and how people have been locked up for a little bit. We have a lot of people from the suburbs, you know, super fucking white people that have never had the experience of not being catered to. And when you have an entire population of people that cannot have every whim that they want served almost immediately, what ends up happening is that revolt where it's going to be a misguided anger. And part of my frustration with being a fellow cisgendered heterosexual white male who is obviously fucking privileged as shit is the fact that I'm trying to learn from the fact that I don't know everything and how to be a better, I'm trying to have a better impact on the environment around me. But what I'm noticing that when it comes to food, I was accepting of the fact that I'm going to shop for a week and try to live within my means, use leftovers, be smart about where I was in public. But there's a whole bunch of people just like me that didn't look at it like that. All they saw was the fucking convenience, which from my position reminds me that not only am I privileged in the fact that I can get food wherever the fuck I want, whenever the fuck I want it, the fact that I have to live amongst people that don't respect that makes me feel like I'm doing something wrong or I should be somehow revolting against those people. So rather than being angry with everyone around me, I'm trying to live by example and remind people that when you eat food that you bought a week ago, because you were planning on the food that you are eating, that's how fucking adults handle shit. But that's a privilege in and of itself. So being honest with that, and that was something like I spent all of my beer money last week on a $60 freaking piece of beef that I knew was going to feed me all week. And I cooked it for 18 hours and I took pride in that. And then as I'm doing it, I'm reading a book that's basically telling me that fucking privilege right there is limited by the fact that I got white skin and I'm in the motherfucking suburbs. And it pisses me off that I can't fix that immediately. But being aware of it and not assuming that that's just my fucking privilege is the reason why I understand. I got fucking work to do. But respecting it is the first fucking step. And that's where we are right now. So I'm a little bit past the anger. I'm still relatively angry with it, as Jeannine would say, but I'm not just ranting. I'm just like, I want to fucking fix it. So being able to learn from people like Christopher Lamarck and Ed Marszewski and try to figure out how do I impact my community in a way that both utilizes my creative spirit and allows me to freaking, lead with my heart. That's the fucking direction I want to be pointed in. So I appreciate people like Ed and Christopher because I'm going in that direction based upon their leadership. Sorry, I'm hungry.
Thank you. And Ed, I guarantee that you have some insight into just having done it, having turned your resources at hand into a way to provide meals to people that need it. So what's your thoughts on how people can help you guys do what you're doing or how they can do their own part? Oh, Ed, here, let me unmute you, bud.
What we're doing is really a complete anomaly, right? It's not something any restaurant or bar or anyone could really do right now. They're battling with just trying to get people hired to work or even just keep their businesses alive. Most people are dealing with basically a triage of whatever their business is. Most businesses are trying to figure out how to close with the least amount of debt. We're really fortunate that we're able to work with some of the people we work with on our foundations. And of course, we're really grateful to all of the people who pay attention to what we're doing and have contributed significant amounts of funds. We had lots of donors for the program. We have lots of people who actually contributed and donated to our workers fund. We sold gift cards at Mars that you could use later. And all the money went straight to our workers to give them some money while they were furloughed and waiting to figure out how to file for unemployment or whatever. But this community we have, it's only so large. There's only so much money we can give to people, but we're trying to create 1,000 meals a week till the end of the year. And we'll be launching a campaign for raising funds for that. We're also always open to working with different organizations, groups, et cetera, to raise funds. As you know, in the nonprofit sector, it's insane. But the good news is there are organizations, foundations and stuff who've actually tried to do the right thing and are actually trying to provide funds to people affected by the COVID-19, whether it's in the hospitality industry or not. You have people like the Lee Initiative. Ed Lee, he's a kick-ass chef from Louisville, who's now on the East Coast. The Lee Initiative works with a bunch of large corps to donate money to pay for these meals all over the country as well. Lee Initiative is actually going to be starting a new thing in which they'll be working with specific food vendors in Chicago and providing restaurants with like a handful of restaurants with $4,000 to $5,000 of credit to purchase food that they could use to sell in the restaurants. There's a million different ways people can get involved. If typically what's happening for like food pantries is that things that are perishing are things that are almost out of, the shelf life's over is what's brought to a food pantry. Meat or, things that need to be refrigerated, almost expired, is brought to a food shelter. And most of those places don't even have the freezer or refrigeration space to keep these items. There's a lot of broken aspects of the entire, way of even feeding people who are in danger of being hungry. But yeah, I mean, it all depends on what your situation is. Where are you working? Where are you with? You can make a decision on how you could participate, whether it's through volunteering, which in fact is very difficult to do too now. Why would I allow people to volunteer to come to my kitchen and work there when we're trying to keep people out of our kitchen and keep our staffs as small as possible? We can't ask people for money all the time either, right? So maybe it's just like making people aware of it or suggesting a place that informing us where we should be bringing food. Another thing that we'll be doing is we'll be working with food trucks to start bringing meals to hopefully shelters for the homeless or to encampments or multiple stops along the way where there's some spots where people might want a hot meal or a hot lunch. But yeah, I mean, it's a black hole when you start looking at feeding people right now. It's endless. It's pretty intense. So yeah, I mean, really just look for those organizations, groups, restaurants who do have a thing like Wherewithal and Parachute said, hey, buy some meals for healthcare workers or purchase some meals for a food shelter. These programs exist. These are not even my ideas. All these ideas exist. They're already out there. We just need to take the ones that we can work with and franchise them and duplicate them. So yeah, I mean, there's a million ideas out there. There's already people out there really figured the shit out. And all we got to do is kind of pick up on what they're doing, franchise it, duplicate it, modify it for where you are, no matter if you're in the suburbs or in Chicago or wherever you are.
That's wonderful. Well, as we wind down today, I just want to thank you all for your just company, your insights, your contributions to the chat this evening. Conversations Cafe couldn't possibly happen without the engagement of our community and individuals like you, agents of impact that want to remind others it's okay not to be okay, and that want to instill hope that, hey, we're going to get through this and it's going to continually change, but we're going to have each other's back and we're going to try and take care of each other with the resources that we each have. We're going to just try and do what we can with them to make this a little bit nicer community in the future. So that's why I love the name Community of the Future so much and everything that falls under it. So in general, I want to thank Ed. I want to thank Jeannine. I want to thank Emmaline and Joel. I also want to thank Juan Kim, who had to leave a little early because Juan is really what got these wheels turning for me probably about a year ago. And Joel had met me down in the city. We went to Milk and Honey Cafe on Division, and we also got to watch Juan paint a patio. And I got to meet him that day officially after admiring him as a painter, a DJ, and a chef. And so today has been kind of like a big old Christmas present for me. So I really just want you to know I really value the work that you guys are doing with the community kitchen and everything else that kind of that you have your hands in with the Public Media Institute.
I would say likewise. I mean, your organization has a huge impact here in Chicago, and I'm sure nationally. I'm not sure where else people know about your org, but it's pretty incredible. It's pretty necessary, and I think that you're demonstrating what future we want to see. You do it by living it. So thank you too. I thank everyone here who's actually giving a shit about what's happening and working in every way possible to help each other out. We needed this help prior to this mess. And now I think more and more people will find it easier to understand there are different paths through experiencing what's going on and knowing that there are people out there that are here for them, or we're here for each other. Positive messages. That's all you need is that love, right?
Hell yeah. So you'll be able to find all the information where you can help out Ed and Juan. And I'd like to give the opportunity for the rest of you to have any closing remarks, where people can find you, and if you just wanted to kind of send them off with something. Emmaline?
Yes. Yeah. Thanks again so much for having me, and thanks everybody for all that you're doing in this community. I'm available on soundnutrition.co is my Instagram, as well as my web address is just soundnutrition.co. So feel free to follow or check it out. Thanks.
Excellent. And I'm sure we'll be seeing more of you as we continue to engage the music industry, as they're all like, what the hell do we do right now? And that's gonna be a whole frontier to navigate as well. So I'm sure it'll be popping back up on the podcast again here at some point. So thanks for joining us. Jeannine?
I'm on sabbatical the rest of the year. I don't want to work, so don't come looking for me.
Cool.
But I will be doing 86 the Silent stuff, because it's okay not to be okay.
She's going to be passing the mic for this month's education to our next 86 the Silence community education. And it's a call to action for you to get educated to best impact the food and beverage industry in your own way. It will be led by some new voices, and Jeannine will be there being kind of the proud champion that she is, watching her little baby birds fly out of the nest. Oh, I'm excited. And Joel, would you like to any closing remarks, my friend?
Yeah, I just kind of want to, horribly echo what Ed said, because I could never say it as eloquently and as passionately as he can while remaining equally as calm, which is also incredibly intimidating and annoying, but it's beautiful. Just to kind of remind people that A, you don't have to feel any certain way right now. B, everybody is playing from a playbook that has not even been written yet. So it's okay to have no idea why you're pissed off at your television that's off. But then also to kind of understand that some people that you're interacting with are probably dealing with a lot more baggage than you've ever thought possible. So I always go back. I had this girlfriend in college that we were driving one day, and she said something that still resonates with me. And I think it applies here. We were driving, and she goes, "Did you ever wonder if the people who are riding your butt in the car just have to poop?" And I was like, no, I've never thought that. But now I'm like, that would explain why that dude wants to get around me, because I know what it feels like to have to poop. But it kind of opened up the conversation to go, every single car on the road is having its own, I'm on the way to go do this moment. So rather than getting in people's way and assuming that people need to get out of your way, just accept the fact that we're all on the same frickin' road and there are no fucking directions right now. That's totally okay. And if you need to get a hold of me, my email is joel@hftd.org. And I have all private social media until my stalkers die of natural causes in the next few months. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I'm glad that, you got your sights set on continuing to do good, and maybe you found a different place to do that at, because I know that your constituents, while are a mixed bag of shows of appreciation and disdain, you are somebody in a city council that is an anomaly as well. You are somebody that gives a shit about the right stuff. You're not afraid to be the squeaky wheel that doesn't stop squeaking until somebody gets the fucking WD-40, right? So keep being that squeaky wheel, man. And I love you for it. And thanks for all you've helped us accomplish as an organization, man. Really, it's been a tremendous to know you. So, but thank you guys. This has been Conversations Cafe, the Cookout, Food and Mental Health. You can definitely do a lot more good by just doing something, doing anything. Just don't do nothing. Go to Mars and check out all the things you can support for them. Check out Impact Culinary if you want to support youth that are unrepresented as far as in this career track of the culinary field. Check that out, support that, and by all means, keep telling everybody that you encounter that it is in fact okay not to be okay, to have hope, because hope fights despair, and that's really what we can do as community members. Rather than spinning our wheels, we can create environments where we press this conversation and normalize it. So thank you all. We're going to be taking ourselves out of this broadcast tonight with a nice little video, kind of giving you a little more insight to what we were talking about with the Poverty is a Violent food drive. And we'll see you next week, every Thursday, 6 p.m. Central Standard Time, streaming live at conversationscafe.org. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Have a good one.
Yo!
What's up?
We about to feed 1,000 families on July 5th, bro.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. And,
Hello, Miss.
I want to bring Christopher Lamarck on from Coffee, Hip Hop, and Mental Health.
Thanks for having me, man.
I'll ask Brad.
May I share this?
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say this is that trauma has replaced their identity. You know? And like trauma would make you believe that you are not valuable, that you are not loved, that you are not necessary, and that is a lie. And I love that you all say over and over again, it's okay not to be okay. But what's not okay is not getting better. You have the permission, you are validated, we affirm you, but it's not okay to sit back and do nothing.